Hej hej! Jag heter Dan Geyer och det här är min kollega Johan Svan och modersmål engelska så jag ska gå över till det nu. Men om du vill om du har några frågor eller någonting, han är väl beredd att hjälpa till. So a quick history about Three Gates. I want to focus most of this talk on what we're doing forward and what we're really excited about. We were founded in 2011. It was about 12 different people that came from a university doing research and other projects, as well as about 6 people from the industry. So we founded the company together at that time. We did a ton of different kinds of research projects that we ended up, getting out of, and then did a bunch of work for hire for Svenska Spel, different game companies, technical companies, that kind of work under the years. So that was sort of how our history came about. We decided to get into basically focus on commercial games. 2016, we went out to get more capital so we could do something. We had a lot of contacts, but we didn't have capital, and we wanted to do something more serious. 2016 September, we went on NGM MTF and started 4 basic bigger projects. So I'll give you a little history about some of the sort of medium projects we do. As we had a history of not wanting to have a huge or horrible burn rate, we did a lot of work for hire projects, and we had a lot of balls up in the air, to be honest. And this is very common in the game industry, to be honest. So we have a project called No Limit Golf. No Limit Golf is with a startup company out of Phoenix, Arizona. They're basically trying to build their own platform it's a combination of charity and games. We met them several years ago, actually through a sponsor that we had as well, which was MGM Resorts, which is the big Las Vegas hotel company. So they kind of put us together, and we sort of did some work for hire for them, and we're still under contract with them. So we were making one game for them. We signed one contract with them that goes into 2018. Basically, the game we make is sort of like it's like Texas Hold'em, but golf. You play a golf game and you bet with your friends. Not for real money, just for fun. And then the other elements of that is in the U.S. there's different laws about charity. So during that time, there's ads and places to go, and you go to actual physical tournaments and you give money for charity. They have it's all combined in one portal. The next game on the list is called Cash Cow. It's another gambling company called B-Spots out of the USA. It's sponsored by what's the Horse Racing Association of America. And basically, it's a company that's trying to start online gambling through mobile in the US. We made one game for them so far in sort of a test period, and they're in the process of getting more users. So right now, they only have about 20,000 users. They have a ton of money. And if they get up to 100 or 200,000 users, the numbers that we have with our game in there now will look really good, and we'll just see how it goes. So it was one of those things we said, okay, we thought it was worth it to make a game for them, and now they're in the process of going into their 3rd round and trying to raise enough money to get users. So we have that game out there and that connection. The last is Offensive Combat on the list here. And that is an FPS, a basic shooter like Counter-Strike. It's a comical shooter we released on Steam. It had kind of slow results at the beginning, but now it's starting to pick up. Yeah, you can go through. Yeah, so there's a picture of Cash Cow. As I mentioned before, there's one thing I just want to mention about B-Spot. The gambling industry there is gargantuan. So it's not something that we're super into, but I think it's actually if you're an investor, it's also something looking into, because there's 2 or 3 companies in the U.S. that are looking into this. And right now, only 2% of gambling spending in the U.S. goes through mobile apps, where in Europe it's almost 50%. So it's something worth looking into. Kill it. All right, so this brings us to sort of like the direction that Three Gates is trying to move, or would prefer to move. And this is our own game called Mainstream Fishing, and this is how we met Endeavor and which is the partner company for the Pro Bowl riders that we'll be talking most of the night about. And this is our mobile game. We just did the soft release for it in September. It has really good numbers. We're getting about 400 installs a day. We haven't advertised it. We haven't even finished. We haven't even let anyone know it exists. But as of right now, it's going really well. So I just want to let you know, anyone who wants to can download this game later tonight. All right, a quick bit about our board. I'll zip through everyone fairly quick. Victor Modig, he's basically been an investor mostly in oil up until the last few years, and then he's been working as a chairman and an investor in both gambling and the gaming space. And he, has a history as a lawyer, so I love him as a chairman because he helps with all the paperwork. Sean Koppinen is basically a gaming guy from the U.S. Worked for Sony Online, Ubisoft, all the big companies. Been involved in 600 game releases, AAA console. So that's his experience. Rune Laudrup, fairly well-known investor here in Stockholm. Exited Maria Bingo, is a chairman of Gold Blue now, and involved in a ton of stuff here in Stockholm. Joachim Dahl, works with Rolf Lundström and Provobis, and a lot of investors down in Gothenburg. Really nice guy. Martin Ekdahl is an old friend of ours at Three Gates and someone we've done a lot of work with. Was a former CEO of a company called Simplegon, Dania Labs, that exited to Microsoft at the beginning of 2017 for a nice chunk of money. And then a bit about our team. Marcus Gazilius is basically our CTO. For those people who don't know or care about how games work, it's probably boring. But he's basically an art guru, so he's the one that makes our games look good. Tommy Lippinen is a server guy, so he does all our servers. Both of these guys were ex-teachers at Uppsala and worked on a lot of AAA games. And Håkan Mattsson's our studio manager. Also an ex-teacher from Uppsala and worked on a couple government projects and for Microsoft. All right, now I'll get through sort of what we're doing now. That's sort of where we landed, and these are the things that we're excited about. So right now, what we're basically doing is working on a console game, which is a huge step for us. And we're what's called cross-pollinating that, which means we're going to market it across with our fishing game and 8 to Glory. So this is our time plan for the future. So somewhere around the 15th of January, we'll have 2 new releases for the mobile game. Basically, those will be updates, but we're also starting an ad campaign that's, sponsored by IGM, Endeavor, WME. Hit it. So the biggest thing that's happened at Three Gates by far, and that we have not been able to communicate to investors here in Sweden, is that we have this license for the Pro Bowl riders. And the reason for that is because no one rides bulls here and no one cares. But it's still a massive, massive target group in the US, in North America, in South America, Australia, and Canada. Here's just something that shows that there's, So this is a video that sort of shows how big it is.
The moment PBR fans around the world have been waiting for. Live from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, it's time! With 11 round wins this season, standing 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing in at 138 pounds, the number 3 Red Bull rider in the world, running out of Jasper, Texas, your reigning, defending with 4 event wins this season and 3 round wins at this year's World Finals. Standing 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighing in at 130 pounds, the 20-year-old riding out of Bullburg, Montana, and the #1 ranked bull rider in the world, just
In my mind, I'm a loner, so I'ma hold on.
So I think that was pretty sensational, as you guys can see. It's quite extreme. It's a very monster truck. But I just, one of the things that I think we've been very bad at explaining to investors here is that this is a big deal for us, and for our company, this is a major milestone. For a company like us to get a sports license like this is very rare. Just to give a little bit of example for those people who don't know that much about the game industry, on Steam, which is the main game platform, there's 18,000 games released a year. On console, maybe 1,500. So it's a much smaller, tighter crew. I mean, the other thing for us is that we have a partnership with this big monster who's going to market it. So Endeavor is now how they branded themselves, but it's been called IMG, WME up to that. I mean, you're talking they have Ferrari, Mercedes, Wimbledon, the World Cup. So they're one of the bigger license companies in the world, and they bought the PBR themselves now. So they're investing in the PBR, and that's one of the reasons they're making the game, is they're trying to get to a younger audience. So for us, we see it as a major opportunity. So I'm going to go through a bunch of slides here. I'll go through them fairly quick. A lot of them just show stats. From we go there and we work together and we figure out how to get to the audience, the bull riding audience, with the IMG team in New York. So this is just to give an example. This is 2017 schedule. Over 1 million people go just physically per year, just in the U.S. They also have tours in Brazil, which is actually bigger than it is in the U.S., Australia, Canada, and Mexico. But at every one of these events, we have what we call physical ground game merchandise. So we have cutouts of the riders where people can get a card to download the game. So, starting in 2018, we did some tests of it this year. We did it at about three of the last events of the year. But at every single one of the events in 2018, we're going to have this ground game marketing campaign. We're going to be, marketing both mainstream fishing and the mobile game, the 8 to Glory bull riding mobile game, as well as a console game. This is just an example of how much press coverage they get. I mean, the great thing about IMG is that even though they own a lot of stuff, but they also, they're agency. So CAA is Brad Pitt's agent. That's Donald Trump's. I mean, everybody you can imagine. They have a ton of actors and obscure people you wouldn't even know had agents that they're agent of. So just hit it, yeah. One of the things, because they bought this and they sort of modernized it, and a lot of the sports that are quite old, like NHL and NASCAR, have had their systems. But when they bought it 2 years ago, they put it in a quite modern system. So Facebook followers, Instagram, they're way ahead of other sports that have the same size target group. This is just a picture of Jared Allen, his back anyways, and an interview with one of our publishers. But I mean, here they're doing a television commercial that they'll play just advertising the game. So one of the good things about PBR right now is it gets tons of television exposure, which it didn't get 2 or 3 years ago. So it gets mainstream television exposure in the US. And as you can see, like Men's Fitness, Ninja Warriors, they have that here. So, they're placing all these bull riders around in their other brands and trying to bring it into the mainstream. One of the problems they've actually classically had in bull riding is, unlike hockey or team sports, it's hard to sell merchandise like jerseys and things like that. So they've been, they spend a ton of money now trying to create stars. And this is just a slide about that. One other thing, I don't know if any of you have Netflix, but there's a Netflix series called Fearless, and that's all about bull riding. So that's another thing they sort of did through, basically funded to sort of just bring the sport into the mainstream. Yeah, I mean, you can see here Aerosmith singing and more cross-team stuff. Billboard magazine, quite big in the US. So the main thing that will be, on the 3rd of January, I'll be in New York at Madison Square Garden for the event. But there's also a big, what PBR has done is they actually started their own country music brand, because IMG has bought at country music festivals now. So they're going to do a major cross-pollination between the Miss Universe pageant, the UFC fighters, the country music pageant, and then the riders. So a lot of the events we're going to, there's going to be, UFC fighters, and so they're trying to bring all these audiences together. And these are their 4 biggest commercial brands right now. This is just a picture of the World Finals, but I mean, it's been quite massive. They decided to move it from the traditional kind of rodeo country places, so they're really focused on being in Las Vegas, New York, LA, and Silicon Valley. So they do some of their more bigger promotions, trying to bring the mainstream audience in there. I think they were up by 40% this year when we went, which was quite surprising because Las Vegas was a bit scary at that point. This just shows sort of their work that Endeavor does. I mean, one of the great things about working with them is that they have an amazing stats department that can help you do stuff. And this is why it just shows that out of all the other major sports, 2 of which are their own brands, but WWE is not really a sport, but it's a quasi-sport. But between NASCAR and that, they actually have much more Facebook users or social attention. Yep. Yep. And so they basically cut two deals that should help us a lot with the game. The first is CBS Sports, which is it's not like SVT, but fairly close. It's the biggest sports network that isn't ESPN in the U.S. And it's basically they have full coverage now on that, and that's been one of the reasons the engagement's so up. So they're going to be on TV a lot. Yeah, 25th anniversary. I mean, one of the other reasons that they kind of allotted us some extra marketing money for 2018 is it's the 25th anniversary of PBR. So in the company, they just sort of allotted a higher percent, of which I'm not allowed to say what it is. But so they just allotted a higher percent of marketing just to celebrate the 25th anniversary of PBR, which is next year. And this is just your typical audience growth chart that just shows the growth over the last few years. In 2009, the last time they had a console game, we actually have more than double the audience since then. All right. So this talks about, a little bit. I tried to focus or like just maybe over-exaggerate how big this is because I know it's not really known here. But I mean, I also want to, say that the guys that I work with back in our studio, they're really good. And that's another big part of this. That's part of the puzzle. I've been in this game industry maybe 19 years now, and I've seen a lot of good companies that make it and a lot that don't. But not everyone can execute this kind of quality. And I mean, the game that we made for 8 to Glory, it's has about 1 million users, not quite yet. But we're higher rated than the EA game for UFC, the FIFA game, all their other licensed games that they have at WMG or IM. We have a higher rating. Yep, that was just. Oh, you can go back if you can. That was just eye candy from one of my artists. All right. Yeah. No. So this is the other part that's sort of like something that we try to emphasize, and why we believe this is such a great project for Three Gates. Is that I don't think people realize that the audience for NHL and bull riding is the same size. And I think if we did something, if we had a license for something, a product like that, I think it would be easier to understand. So right now, the PBR audience in the U.S. is the same size as NASCAR or as NHL. This is sort of the nitty-gritty of our sales stats. I mean, this is why the actual numbers of why we think this project is really going to be good. And that is that NASCAR and WWE, the wrestling, which is a quasi-sport as they call it, but both of them are covered by IMG, Endeavor, now WME. Both of those have the same size audience, and they're selling 9 million units a year, right, on console sales. Our sales goals, I mean, we put our sales goals that we want to sell 1 million units over the next 3 years, but I want to sell a lot more than that, but we don't. It's hard to know when you're in unknown territories, and I promised too much before, so I don't want to promise too much. I mean, I'm hoping we're going to do a lot better, but if we can do anything in line with what these other licenses do that have the same size audience, we should do very well. And that's sort of what this slide's about. It also shows that 69 million fans, that's avid fans that engage with the sport once a week, just in the US. And if you ever have time to look at that Fearless thing, you'll see that it's insanely big, or bigger in Brazil than it is in the US, which I had no idea about until we did this project. But, the US fans do have more money and spend more money. That's just the reality of the business. But the Brazilian fans have been really great at supporting the mobile game as well. But that number goes up to over 100 million when you add the other countries that are in there. Questiones.
Yes. Could you describe the cooperation with Endeavor?
Yeah. So I don't know how many of you have ever seen the show Entourage, but if you have, there's a character in it called Ari Gold. And that character is based on the guy that I work with at Endeavor named Ari Emanuel. No, but it's working with them is the most professional company we've ever worked with in Three Gates, and they have they really want bull riding to come into mainstream, so they're helping us a ton, and they're very clever and they have a ton of resources. So what we've noticed is the more time we spend with them, the more we engage with them, the more they give us back. So working with them has been, well, for me, I work with a lot of publishers, good and bad, but this is the best one.
What goals do you have for Three Gates over the next 3 years?
I think our main goal is, we want to get this game out, have it be a success, have it have high sales, have it do good, have the investors be happy with us, have the team build up. But I think then, the next step for us is to get other titles with Endeavor, with IMG, WME. They have a ton of licenses, and one of the most important things in this whole, making a bull riding game, which I never thought I would do, but one of the most important things is that it gives us a doorway to get other licenses with a very big, well-connected company.
Okay, thank you very much, Three Gates.
Yeah.